hoping, this is one of Karula's favorite hunting areas. I was hoping to see a track or hear an alarm call. So, and welcome to sensational TKO, who would like to know, is this happening now? It is. We are live from the African bush on Djuma Private Game Reserve, and so far this morning we found elephants and lions. I'm in search of leopards at the moment, but we'll see what else is about there. So don't go anywhere, and enjoy the live safari. But Jamie has found a feathered friend for you guys to look at, so let's go see what it is.
Right up until that exact moment, there was a kingfisher sitting on the branch. Unfortunately, it flew away as we were linking. It was one very bedraggled looking brown-headed kingfisher. I actually got really excited because I thought it was a grey-headed. Let's see if I can try and find it again for you. And try not to do what Scott did the last time he tried to show everyone a bird, which was accidentally drive into a marula tree. It was a very big marula tree as well. Where'd it go? Oh, I'm sorry. It has flown away, and I think it has flown quite far away. Oh well, you win some, you lose. Of signal break up there, so we won't that road. I can hear the dwarf mongoose calling. Let's see if we can't spot them. My suspicion is that they're on the other side of the drainage line in the termite mound. I'm just listening to the Game Drop channels again. Perfect. Okay, I'm just making sure that we can get back into that Birmingham boy sighting. See if we can't find these dwarf mongoose. I can hear them. All gone quiet. Oh well. It is the joy of a live safari, that things don't always stick around when you want them to. I'm just trying to see if I can't find them. Now, we spoke a little bit about vultures, and hopefully my signal will hold up for us to continue going straight. But Maggie in Western Australia has been listening carefully to our comments about vultures thermaling and the fact that in this cold, damp weather, they cannot, or they have to wait for quite a long time before there's warm air rising that allows them to thermal. And Maggie was wondering then, how do they find enough food in winter? Well, Maggie, as far as I know, as similar to the Australian winters, during the day with the sun out, and of course for us it's our dry season, so there's no rain. I'm just checking to see again if I can't locate these dwarf mongoose for you. I don't want to travel too far before I've answered your question, Maggie. During the day, the sun is out because it's not cloudy. So even though it's not as warm as it is during summer, it's warm enough to create that warm air rising and the thermals that they need to, in order to survive and find their food, as you said, by sight and by thermaling. So they definitely don't go hungry during the winter season. It's only on it's more the cold and cloudy days when it's a bit rainy, that the ground is a bit damp and it doesn't exude the same warmth. But even today, we'll probably start to see vultures in the next few hours as the ground heats up, because I can feel the temperature rising already. Now, they will be absolutely fine. It's just that they tend to be a bit more grounded in the damp weather. And of course, vultures can fly. without that thermaling for them is the best way of, or the most energy efficient way of searching for food. X-Ranger has said, imagine if every time we linked to it that had flown away, we got $1, and how rich we would be. Yes, I start trying to calculate for the next week or so just how much money we would be earning if we did that. It'd be hilarious to calculate. I would be a very wealthy woman, especially given the current exchange rate. I think that we would be raking the money in. It is one of just the joys of a live safari. It's live. So if it flies away. Trying to put something on camera with wings isn't always the easiest deal. It's the same with the bush babies, trying to catch them on camera. But in a way, I actually think that adds to the whole experience. It's all real and raw. I'm just keeping an ear out on the Game Drive channel. We will be making our way back into that Birmingham boy sighting, but it is going to take us a while. There are lots and lots of vehicles that are cycling through, and because it's a sighting that is on a main road, there's vehicles from all around coming to visit, and they're all having their chance to allow their guests to enjoy that Birmingham boy sighting. Checking carefully along this road. The leopards love this area. Ooh, wonderful question from Debbie. And in order to answer it, I'm actually going to get my phone out for Debbie's question. She said that she's asking about a post that I think Brent put up, but I've also got a picture of it on my phone. Let me just make sure. Sorry, my apologies for my lack of technical abilities. Debbie's actually asked about this little creature. Oh, it's better that way. Now that is a pseudo-scorpion. And to give you a sense of scale, that hand, that ring is my ring. So that's my middle finger there. That is where it was sitting between my two fingers. So you get a really nice idea of just how tiny this little creature was. I had such fun experimenting with Jerry's macro lens attached to my phone. Getting him in focus was something of a difficult exercise. Now, Debbie, this pseudo-scorpion, it's one of the first ones I've ever seen, or at least managed to get a photo of. And Steph said it was one of the biggest he's ever seen, just to give you an idea of how tiny they are. They don't have a tail. I know that's not as clear. They don't have a scorpion-like tail. But the reason they're known as pseudo-scorpions, they're amazing, actually. They're like the most incredible mixture between spiders and scorpions. There's venom within their pincers themselves, and not just venom in the pincers, they also have spinnerets, so they can produce silk. So they can embed their silk with venom in their ways of catching their prey. And while he was doing this, he was sort of spreading webbing all the way across my hands as he was walking across. Not dangerous to us. I mean, they really are not of any kind of threat, and it's such a small size. But definitely one of the most fascinating creatures I have encountered out here. They live on little mites, clothing moth larvae, anything like that they can catch that is small enough for them to consume. This particular guy was in the abdomen of a longhorn beetle, a much larger longhorn beetle, that was slowly dying, and it was busy collecting all of the mites that were on it. So that, Debbie, was the pseudo-scorpion. Such a brilliant little creature. The fascinating tiny things that we have out here. I think I definitely should go the route of Brent in terms of investing in an iPad. I'm just going to show you. See if I got it in slow motion. I did get it in slow motion. Him moving. So you get a really nice perspective of the scale. Look at me with my slow motion videos. It's very out of focus though. There you can see 4 legs plus the pincers. And you really get a sense of just how tiny this little creature is. You can see how clear the prints and calluses, charming calluses, on my hands are. A combination of driving and using saws, pangas, hammers, and all kinds of things. There we go. Little video of the pseudo-scorpion. Now that bird that's calling has become my nemesis bird. Let's just listen for a second. Can you hear it calling? That is a southern boo-boo. Dave and I spotted it the last time. We didn't manage to get it on camera. Again, joys of live safaris. It's not the Cape turtle dove that's calling off behind it. It's the whistle. Southern boo-boo. One day we're going to get it on camera. They love these thick drainage line areas. That's where they like to hang out and spend a little bit of their time, or most of their time, in really, really thick vegetation, which is why I've named it my nemesis. I see him. Oh my goodness, how exciting. Dave. On the other side of the drainage line, there's a tree with sort of brownish seeds. He's on the tree to the right of that. There he is, brilliant. Hey, so much for my nemesis bird. There we go. A southern boo-boo. And there you can see just why they are so difficult to manage to get on camera, fluttering about in the thick vegetation. Might not be the best view in the world, but still counts as a victory. Yes, Dave, we managed it, finally. So exciting. I'm very chuffed. Brilliant stuff. Right, from the little things to some of the largest on our reserve, I think that Brent has managed to catch up once again with an elephant herd. So why don't you jump on the back with him?
Zoom in. We've got a squirrel alarm calling. Ian thought he just spotted a snake, so we're just trying to see.
It looks like feet, I don't know, what is it?
What? Where did you? It's a piece of a giant plated lizard. Where did you spot that? That's been eaten by something else, probably by a predatory bird. I wonder if that's what the squirrel was alarm calling at. Something was eating that giant plated lizard. We were hoping for leopard, but just have a quick look. The fact that that squirrel jumped across the ground means it could be a predatory bird, but this particular area is favored by quite a few different leopards that we've seen regularly. I see where that squirrel is actually looking. Seriously upset. Looking. So there's the squirrel. Oh, no. Yes, there he is. That little dot there. And he's looking down towards this drainage system. So we're going to do the same. He's seriously upset. Come on, Karula. So we're just going to concentrate and try to see what the squirrel's alarm calling at. Very upset. pop our nose in here where we can see down into this little drainage system. The squirrel's looking into these thickets here. So what I'm going to do is there's a little bit of high ground there. So while you're with me, I'm going to pop my head over the edge. Maybe there's a leopard there. The squirrel was looking down here. So it's going to be quite difficult to get a vehicle in there. So before we try bash and crash, I'm going to have a quick little poke into these thickets. You can hear the squirrel getting louder and louder. Very upset. There is something here. Can't see anything, but that squirrel's not stopping. And the way it's calling, I don't think it's alarming at a snake, but maybe that a leopard's popped across there. I'm just going to check around a little bit, see if we can find some tracks. If we don't find any tracks, I'm going to take a more serious stroll into the bushes. Franklin alarming, impala, kudu, all the different animals will let you know if there's a predator around. Now, with a small animal like a squirrel, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult because being so small, so many different things will eat them. So birds, snakes, leopards. Look at that. What is that? That's hyena. I got very excited for a second there. It just looked like a leopard track. Now we're just going to pop onto the other side of this drainage line, see what's there, and while we do that, Jamie's got some birds that are doing some alarm calling.
And as with our kingfisher, they immediately stopped. The birds demonstrating an incredible sense of humor this morning. They stopped as Brent sent you back across to me. They were actually having a bit of an argument, these crested francolin, all calling at each other. Two of the males actually got involved in a brief scuffle before separating. Aww, Franklin, Oh, they might start calling again now that the others are calling. Let's just have a look at the group that's going to go across the road, because I think that they're going to call again. Come on. Come on. Oh, have a look at the spur on the back of the leg, if you can. Now they're going into the grass. I'll actually show you a picture in my book. Franklin, despite their sort of harmless-looking figure, are capable of inflicting fighting quite viciously between each other. And I'll show you a picture of exactly what that spur looks like. And that's what's given them the name, or why they are related to a group of birds known as the spur fowls. Let me try and find the good example here. All of them have them. This will actually be a fine example. It's not the one I was looking for, but nevertheless, we get the right idea. It's not the same bird that we've been looking at, but it does give a really nice, clear picture of what I mean when I say spur. They've got these extended toes at the back that are hardened and have claws on the end of them, and they use those, particularly the males, when in competition for access to the ladies. And some of the spur fowls even have, if we look up at, for example, this one, they even have more than one spur along the backs of the legs. Now, this is definitely not a bird that you will see here. This is localized endemic to Ethiopia, but it's all part of the same family, so it demonstrates exactly what I mean. It's a hardwood spur fowl, if you were interested. Not one that I've ever seen. Now, Ethiopia is definitely on my top of one of the top of the list that are places that I would love to go to see the bird life and the animal life there. Oh, there's some incredible stuff there. The Ethiopian red wolf would be an animal that I would be so excited to see. Now, that, as far as I know, is the most endangered predator in Africa. And it is quite literally a wolf-like animal that lives on the tops of the mountain ranges up there in a very, very localized, isolated population. Franklin, fair enough, farewell. It's amazing, they love to chirp over me whenever I'm talking, but when I want to stop and look at them doing it, they all went quiet. I promise you, these animals definitely have a sense of irony. And a warm welcome to Nick in Nevada, who has been watching for the last week or so. And Nick, as a fairly new viewer, was very curious about why the animals don't run away from the vehicle. And Nick, we've got a nice example here of animals that are going to move away from us. It depends very much on the animal species concerned. So we've got a lovely herd of Inyala here. Now, this is an antelope species that likes to be out in the open. Doesn't like to be out in the open, but prefers thicker and denser vegetation. They're playing in the back there. This is the perfect weather to watch antelope play. Even Inyala do it regularly. They bounce around. We had an incredible sighting. Sorry, Nick, I haven't forgotten you. But we had this incredible sighting with a young male that was basically doing an obstacle course, round and round in circles. I think it might even be the same young males that we're looking at now, because it's a very similar area. Go forward, maybe we can get a better view from there. Nick, so it depends very much on the animal. Now, the Nyala, as soon as they settled in a thicker vegetation area, they immediately relaxed with our presence. But for animals like our lions, our elephants, leopards, and so on, they have grown up with vehicles around them from the earliest age possible, and their mothers the same before them. Unfortunately, our Nyala are going off into behind the trees. But let's use the Birmingham boys from this morning as an example. They've grown up in a pride where they have seen vehicles throughout their lives. Now, the process of habituation is a long one. So wild animals are naturally afraid of the vehicle initially, which is why we've spoken before about that skittish leopard that hangs out around Buffelshoek Dam, that doesn't clearly hasn't grown up here. He's a dispersal male. He's moved away from wherever he was born in search of fresh genetics to mate with and to pass on his genes. So that's very common, leopards moving about, and every now and again the Sabi Sands gets a leopard that is a truly wild leopard that has come from somewhere where they've hardly ever seen vehicles and cars. It's very easy if animals are habituated from the very beginning, and it's so important. It is an underestimated part of what we do, or the way in which it contributes to the conservation of these animals, because if these animals ran away from vehicles every time they were seen, tourists would not pay money to come here, lodges would not exist, and therefore conservation areas would actually really struggle to pay the bills that are required for keeping a wilderness area like this protected. Fencing, for example, anti-poaching patrols, research going into the impact of different man-made structures and so on. I mean, you get the idea as to why the financial support of tourism is so essential. And as a country, it is vital for our survival. So starting reserves that are starting up in a wilderness area where the animals are not so relaxed. With leopards and lions, what they have often done in the past, they don't need to do that anymore because we have plenty of relaxed leopards from birth. But what they used to do in the sort of 60s, 70s, is they would take an antelope, a dead antelope, and they would put it in a tree as bait, essentially. And they'd wait for the leopards to come and feed on it. Let's use a leopard for an example. And then what they'd do is they'd just park the car off as far as possible while still seeing the leopard feeding, and leave the vehicle, leave it with the radio on for days, and repeat that process for days and weeks and months until they got to the point where that animal started realizing that the vehicle was of absolutely no threat to them and allowed it to approach closely. And then from there, especially if you habituate a female, you have got future generations that will then be habituated by her behavior, because the cubs, the baby animals will learn from the behavior of their mothers. And if mom doesn't run away from this big scary thing, then they don't need to either. Now that's something that has happened many years ago in this area, which is why our animals are so relaxed. And it's such a pleasure because it means that we don't have any kind of major impact on their behavior. So the lions go about their daily business as they would regardless of whether or not we were there. Look at this beautiful Inyala bull. Wrong direction, buddy. They went that way. The ladies went south. You're going north. Not sure how clearly you can see it, but there's mud all over the top of his horns. What a beautiful animal. So what he's been doing is thrashing his head in a muddy pan. Nobody knows exactly why they do that. One of the theories is that it's to rub the scent glands between their eyes, around there, so the preorbital glands. Another theory is that it makes them look big and strong, and the more mud you pack on your horns, the bigger you look. Kudu do it as well. Wildebeest occasionally do it. Only ever the males. So it's probably a sort of a function of them competing for the attentions of the females and with each other for access to the females. So Nick, the answer to your question is not a short one, but it is a very, very important aspect of the way in which conservation areas like the Sabi Sands, and the Sabi Sands is such a good example of habituation done right, to the point that the animals are so incredibly accustomed to the vehicles that they aren't really affected by them at all. We often speak about the DRC, and I've just picked up a passenger in the form of a buffalo thorn branch. Hold on a second. Release me. Thank you. It's the buffalo thorn in front of me that decided it wanted to come on the game drive with us. Let's try that again. This time, hopefully, it will pass under the vehicle. I don't want to go off-road to get around it. There's no reason to do that, although we're going to have to here. Now, we often speak about our camp, the DRC. And Peggy watching has seen us go past the signs a few times, and I suppose we've never actually really given you an update or spoken about it in the non-abbreviated form. So she saw the sign that says Djuma Research Center and was wondering a little bit about that. Now, the DRC is where we live, Peggy, or where most of the crew lives. There's only a couple of us that live in a separate house. And it was prior to our involvement and prior to us starting up in this area. And I don't know the full history. I must be honest, Peggy, I don't know the full history behind the DRC. But I assume it was a wonderful spot for researchers and students to come and stay within Djuma. And the landowners very kindly allowing the students to actually come and do research on their land and to look into anything from probably vegetation surveys to bird monitoring to insect monitoring, right through to monitoring the larger animals like the cats. So I'll look a little bit into the history, Peggy, see if I can't find out about the history to the Djuma Research Center, but it makes total sense to me that it was a nice spot for students and researchers to come and conduct their research. All right, I just need to get onto the Game Drive channel. I want to just find out what's happening with those lions. Oh, no, hold on. Somebody else got there before me. Oh, no, somebody else got in before me again. We'll just wait our turn to have a conversation. They're chatting about quarantine. They're chatting about quarantine, and quarantine is one of Karula's sons. And he's only recently just left her territorial area in the last year or so. So the update on quarantine was that he was seen crossing into Torchwood late last night. Now, I've actually never seen quarantine, and I've been desperate to. I saw him on the live safari while I was on leave. I was watching it. But I've yet to see him in the flesh, so to speak. He looks like he is a stunning leopard. Something that we can actually look forward to once we start traversing Cheetah Plains. Hopefully we will have more sightings of him in that area, because that seems to be where he's settled for now. You know what, let's just go and investigate that lion sighting. We'll look at it from the top of the crest and see how many vehicles have made their way through there. It sounds like, from what I can hear, Taxon's saying there's still lots of vehicles waiting to get into that sighting. We'll do some, what would we call it? Reconnoitering. Evidence gathering. We'll go and have a look and see what it looks like from. Luckily, it's in the perfect position for us to go and sit and look from above a crest. And have a look at what's happening to this tree. Let's look here at the bark and the patterns that are along this bark. And this is how elephant action goes about ultimately killing the odd large tree, such as this one. Look at that crisscross of mud, almost like a vein system in a way. And that's come from termites that are eating their way through. Now, that bark was stripped away from the tree by an elephant at some point in the last few months. And now you can really see how that opens up a way for wood borers and termites and other parasites of trees. I suppose you could call them parasites. They're not really technically parasites. Nevertheless, they do harm the trees themselves. Those trees, but you'll probably... something we don't always stop to look at. And I've just taken the opportunity while we were talking about that, to answer a question from Monkey Man about whether or not we get quails out here. And Monkey Man, yes, we do. But I don't think I've managed to get any on camera. I have seen them once or twice. But here's an example of just 2 of the quails that we could see here. Relatively unusual. Definitely was a bird that we would get exceptionally excited about seeing. The common quail at the top, and then just below it, the harlequin quail. Both of those do occur here. It's just a matter of seeing them. There's also little birds known as button quails, a little bit further down. This is a button quail, and that's also something that we could see here. Button quails are, you've got to be so careful with them. I worked in an area where they were exceptionally common, and they tend not to fly right up until the last moment. And they very often hide in patches of grass in the middle of the road. And this was a particular area that I was working in, didn't have as much traffic on the road, so there was plenty of grass growing up in the middle of it. And you had to be so careful that they weren't button quail, and they are perfectly cryptically colored, especially when in dry grass in the middle of winter. You can barely see them. Tiny little birds. Only about, I would say, only really about this big in terms of size. And they would shoot up just at the last minute as you were driving past them. It did mean that you had to, at times, traverse very slowly. Now we might lose you a little bit through the signal dip. Let's just see how we go. We go up the other side of the dip. Sensational, one of our newest viewers, was wanting to see a termite mound. Well, Sensational, we shall provide that for you. And that squirrel's still alarm calling. It's the same one that Brent's been following up on. Keep a lookout for leopards. Oh, Sensational, I was going to stop at this termite mound, but it's a bit of a tricky spot, actually, to do so. What's wrong, squirrel? Sorry, Sensational, distracted. This is what Brent has been busy doing this morning. He's been tracking to see what the squirrel is alarm calling on about. It's a very cross squirrel. Sounds like a witch cackling. Standing by. Okay. Brent has found the answer to our alarm calling squirrel. He also just called me squirrel on the Game Drive channel, which is hilarious. Copy that, thank you. Brent, depending on what's happening with that sighting, I'm going to make my way south on Drakensberg and back towards those Ngala. So Brent has the answer to the alarm calling squirrel, but I think I'm actually going to let him tell you all about it himself. But before I do, Sensational's question about termite mounds. I know there's a couple of really nice ones here, but you were wondering if termites are bigger than ants. Depends on the species of termite, and it depends on the species of ant. In general, yes, termites are slightly larger, especially the soldier termites, but you get some incredibly large, for example, the matabele ants that are exceptionally big. Here's a termite mound for you, Sensational. Very much covered in vegetation, But because it's cool and cloudy, I might even be able to find you some termites myself. And I think both Brent and I will keep an eye on what is happening there. There you go. It's a large termite mound for our newest viewer. Okay, so I'm sure you're wondering what that squirrel was fussing about. I'm going to make my way back towards those lines, see if we can't squeeze ourselves a space in that sighting. In the meantime, let's find out what Brent has found.
So, that squirrel sent me on a bit of a wild goose chase through the little creek system there. And eventually, I had the most incredible experience because that squirrel was no more than 1.5 meters away from me and still alarming. Then I suddenly noticed he was looking at the ground a little bit more intently. So suddenly I tucked my feet in slightly thinking, oh dear, could there be a black mamba here? I did see a snake. I didn't see it well enough to identify it, but if I had to guess, it was probably a spitting cobra, and it shot off. So it wasn't a leopard, unfortunately. Quite sad about that, but nice to see a spitting cobra all the same.
Copy that. Thank you very much, Mike. Just check your info in the one to make the way in.
James, Richard is wondering, do squirrels, hello kudus, ever make nests in trees like the squirrels in the northern hemisphere do? They most definitely do. They live in hollow trees. They will have little nests where they give birth and where they will spend the night. Here we go, a female kudu with a red-billed oxpecker. Oh, monkey's alarming. Right, let's just listen carefully. Mamba Road, see him? Station says, monkeys alarming, sounds like Mawati, Mamba Road. I'm going to be following up. So, sorry, couldn't be in a rush. Could it be Queen Karula? After all this searching, and maybe it's because I can see clearly now the rain has gone. Ha 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 ha. Bad joke for the morning.
From the other side of my boat, I think.
I hear him for. Morning, Mkao.
Yeah, it sounds like
Mamba Road. Ingala. I'll go check anyway. Morning, guys. I'm very good. All right, good luck. See you later. Awesome. Thanks very much. So, there we go. A little morning meeting with Taxon and his guests as we are going past. Tax thinks those monkeys might be sitting really high in the tree, spotting those lions in the distance, but we're going to go have a look anyway. And there's some friends of mine staying at Djuma at the moment. So we heard Graham on the back seat saying he just spotted a little sparrowhawk. Could that be bird number 200? So let's have a look. As we drop into the Janatoyan on the right. Eyes open. Beautiful predatory little bird. He could have flown. Oh, there he is. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? I'm not so sure. It's a sparrowhawk. Let me just get my camera out to get a closer look. Oh no, he's just tucked up really nicely there. A little sparrowhawk. So that's not a raptor we see too often here. Sometimes also known as a shikra. So a little scepter, feed off a lot of small rodents, but they're also specialist little bird hunters. Now you can have a look quite clearly. Unfortunately, I think if we go any closer, he's going to fly away. But you'll see very fine barring on his chest. Oh, he's gone. Well, there we go. Wasn't that nice? That could be a new bird species for quite a lot of you. And there we go, sparrowhawks. And it was Lucy who was looking for number 200. Let me see if I can find it here for you. So we saw a red eye, yellow legs, and that very fine barring on its chest. Very beautiful little bird, a little sparrowhawk or shikra. There we go, there's the immature. Male's got a slightly darker head than the female. There we go, flying from the top view, and there you can see their distribution through southern Africa. So we're just above Swaziland there. So really nice. Lucy, hopefully that's number 200 for you. Let me know if you do reach 200 on this sunrise safari. Otherwise, our work will be cut out for us on sunset safari. Nearly landed on your head. What was it? I didn't even see. A woodpecker.
No, but there's a little dove there.
A little dove. There you go. Nearly landed on Wiem's head. Look at that beautiful little emerald spotted wood dove. You can see those emerald spots glistening. And look at that. We found the nest. You can see that little tangle of grass. They are such pretty little birds. There you go. And there you see it is in a tree. James Richard is actually wondering what is the best way when learning trees to look at? The leaves, the general size, the shape. Well, I'd say all of the above. I mean, here we go is a nice little example of where we've got everything to look at. So this is a weeping wattle that's been fed off quite a bit by elephants. There we go. You can see the flowers, very distinct yellow flowers, and the very distinct bipinnate leaves. And also, if we go to the right slightly, Wiem, and up, and zoom, and down a bit, into the weeping wattle, a little bit left. There we go. You can see the seeds as well. So there we go. Three very nice identifying. You can see last year's set of seeds on the left, this year's set of seeds on the right. And James, I'd say it's a culmination of everything, and also looking at what area you're in. Certain tree species are only going to grow here on the edge of a drainage system or a little dry riverbed. So here we're likely to get more jackalberries, and there's a very distinct tree that only really grows where there's good groundwater on the left here, and that is the acacia, the blackthorn, which is one of the acacia species. This is Acacia robusta. Very big white thorns. And of course, acacias, you can see it's got very similar bipinnate leaves to the whooping wattle, but of course you've got those large white thorns that sort of give it away. But also the leaves aren't as long. So the weeping wattle's got nice long leaves. Actually, I'll go get you a sample so you can have a look. So even though the leaf shape is very similar, what was that? Is it Franklin? Uh-huh. So even though the leaf shape is very similar. Let's get an older leaf. Got to be careful I don't stab myself. What did I do for you guys? I'm just going to rush off quickly to the weeping wattle. There we go, I'm back. So there we go. So there we go. There's the weeping wattle, and there's the acacia. So even so, the little leaflets look very, very similar. The size of the leaf itself is massively different. Okay, so, and you can see the acacia's got a slightly more rounded point tip, where the weeping wattle's got a slightly more pointed tip. So they are quite little nuances, but I mean, you'd have to really know your trees if we just gave you these two leaves to separate the species. But anyway, I would say just general, you look at where they're growing, their general shape. So leadwoods are very, very distinct, and there's a beautiful one just through that gap there, Vim. You can see, there we go, you can see that sort of gnarled, almost bendy branches on them, and quite sparsely leaved compared to other species. Also very distinct bark. Bark's always a great one to look at. And there's a leadwood a bit closer, so we'll show you that one's bark. There we go. It's almost like crocodile scales. So there we go, you can see that leadwood bark. Very, very distinct. So as I was saying, it's a combination of lots of different things that help you identify trees. It's a difficult one for me to explain, because with most trees, it's sort of second nature. So since the age of about 4 years old, I've been taught trees by my father, and on long family car trips, basically, the game was, what tree is that? What tree is that? What tree is that? So it does help. So I think a lot of that stuff for me, I don't even go beyond and think about that. It's just sort of ingrained. So listening to those monkeys again, I think Taxon might be right. I think that I have seen those lions, but it's always worth going back and having a look in that area. So Safari Dean is wondering whether any of the trees here have built up a defense against termites. Most definitely, there's quite a few species that are completely termite resistant, and here's one right here. This one is termite resistant due to its poisonous latex. Let me just get a little bit closer. So this is actually a baby timbuti, this one here, and there's a slightly old one through there. You can see as they get older, the bark changes from that smooth white to quite a broken up, not quite as scaly as the leadwood, so the little pieces of bark are much smaller. But if we grab a leaf, look at that. Now you don't want to get that on your skin. I'll put it on the dash for you, Jim. Now you don't want to get that on your skin. That is highly noxious. Now you can dab that on warts and it'll actually burn them off. So certain animal species self-medicate by eating timbuti. It purges their system. So I'm just listening to those monkeys again. Yeah, they do sound like that, the lions. But who knows, maybe they spotted a leopard on the other side of the lions. So we'll keep slowly moving our way towards there. So Dory would like to know, would the termites and the wood borers work together? And Dory's in South Carolina. Well, Dory, not really, because they're competing for the same resource. You will find that quite often wood borers will be the first into dead wood before a termite is able to. But I wouldn't say they work together. Maybe they work in unison is a better description. Now, this is a very, very cool tree. This is a Transvaal or low-felt saffron. And it is actually going to fall over one of these days. And it is quite a nice large saffron. And you can see tiny little leaflets that grow almost off the branch. One of the distinguishing features about this tree. And when they do flower, they have a wonderful scent. But as I said, this poor tree is going to keel over. So a lot of what happens on these little river systems is that when the water does come down in the flood, it is quite impressive and it undercuts the bank. And then you can see that large taproot. You probably find when this tree started growing, the riverbed was 20 meters further to the west of where it is now. And if we go a little bit down, you can see there's that massive taproot. It's just holding on for the moment, but I think another big rain and a flash flood or two, and that saffron is going to come tumbling down. So, Nat.Geo on YouTube is saying, is it true that certain trees are able to communicate chemically with each other to change their taste and make themselves more poisonous? Well, not poisonous, just less tasty. And this is one of the tree species that does it very well. It is that brackthorn, the Acacia robusta we looked at earlier. So if it is being fed on heavily by elephants or giraffe or even by kudu and inyala, the brackthorn will send a chemical into the air that all the other brackthorns around, and there are quite a few that are growing around here, will pick up on that, and what that'll do is cause them to start releasing more tannins. So they become very, very bitter and almost unpalatable to the animals. So yes, it is true, and this is one of the chief culprits. So, while we continue our search of Djuma, let's jump back on board with Jamie, who's with those lions, and let's see if those monkeys are alarming at the lions. Hopefully she'll let me know so I can plan where to go next.
I've been listening out for those monkey alarm calls and trying to see if they are in fact shouting at the lions. Haven't been able to see them from here, but that doesn't mean that they're not. Nevertheless, wonderful that we managed to squeeze our way into the sighting. We're not going to be able to stay right up until the end of the sunrise safari. But just look at this. A glorious sight in the morning sun is the one that is lying down closest to us with his belly showing. That is, I think it's Birmingham boy number 3. Now, we've discussed a little bit about what that mark is around his stomach and whether or not, initially I thought it was an injury. I thought it was a bruise. But we've come to the conclusion that it's probably some kind of skin disease, an infestation of a mite or a parasite, or possibly even a fungal infection on the skin. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, Mike, go ahead. Copy that, thanks, Mike. Brent's following up on those. Copy that, thanks. Brent, it actually does seem like they are they were alarm calling from the Leadwood side, close to where that sort of tributary joins the Mulwati. So I'm not sure that it was the lions. There's 3 stations here, but one just pulling out, so you can bypass. Oh, okay, copy, that's perfect. Yeah, you'll miss us. We're right at the junction. One of them up and moving to probably a better spot for shade. There's our dirty gentleman scratching his ear at the back. I was busy just talking about the mark that's on the belly of this lion closest to us and discussing the possibility that it is a skin disease rather than an injury, which I think seems to be more likely. Either way, when we compare them to the 5 males that first made their appearance on Djuma all that time ago with Hayden and Peter on Big Cat Week when they were much younger, they're definitely no longer the young, innocent and uninitiated males that they once were, covered in scars and wounds, evidence of their dominance in this particular area. The discussion that we were just having over the Game Drive channel concerned the monkeys' alarm calling. And we were just trying to work out if it is in fact them shouting at the lions or whether or not there is another reason for the commotion. The way that this area is positioned and the way that the sighting is positioned makes me think that it's unlikely that it was the lions that they were calling or alarm calling at. And this is an exciting prospect for this afternoon's sunset safari because it does mean that they will most likely stick around here. There's plenty of water, there's lots of shade for them. And with full bellies and the sun coming out and the temperature heating up, they're not going to go wandering off too far. Something we've discussed a lot as well, just talking about the Birmingham boys and their takeover, is whether or not when a takeover like this occurs, their testosterone levels increase. And that we've suggested is maybe the reason why they have grown as they have and why their manes have filled out as they have. I mean, that would have happened anyway, of course, as the natural aging process occurs. But it would be very interesting. I'm going to look in and see if I can find any research into the way in which the testosterone levels of these lions must go. It must go up when they start a takeover, as they have now completed. And just an update for those of you who are long-term viewers and want to know about the Matimba male. Unfortunately, he still hasn't been seen as far as I've heard so far. There was a fight between the Mjingilan males and the Matimba males, and it seems as though one of the Matimba males has gone missing and may have been quite seriously injured. But as soon as we find anything out about that particular situation, I promise you that we will update you. And speaking about possible injuries, and of course we have seen the male lion that was limping incredibly this morning, Groove Tastical was wondering whether or not there are any predators that would go after an injured lion. Their biggest threat is going to be another male lion. Now with this coalition, they will most likely be safe from that kind of intrusion unless they are far separated from the rest of the males within it. But their biggest threat out here is another coalition of males. And as soon as you've got a 2 against 1 or 3 against 1 scenario, particularly with an injury involved, then that lion automatically is on the back foot, so to speak. So yes, there are predators that will go after them. Something like a spotted hyena or even a group of spotted hyenas. Oh, here comes the male that went for a brief drink. He's now returning to the shade. Now that surely is Blondie. Am I mistaken about that? I'm pretty sure that it is. His mane definitely looks fuller, but they've all grown so much that I'm still learning the different marks and scars that identify I'm still learning to re-identify the Birmingham boys. It's been such a while since I've seen them all together. So those of you who are more familiar with them, please just let me know which one you think has just arrived. It's definitely the lion with the fullest looking belly. No, it's not Blondie. My mistake, sorry. I think I'm wrong about that. But yes, in terms of threats to an injured lion, I actually think that was number 3. Although originally I thought that number 3 had the belly rash, but I might have got that mixed up with Birmingham boy number 4. I think we need better names. I think we need to have a conversation as guides and just find some names that are not numbers, get to know their personalities a little bit, now that we're seeing them more regularly. Now back to the conversation about an injured lion and the possible predators. A male lion, even with a serious injury, is still a tremendously powerful animal. So the chances of a spotted hyena, even a large number of spotted hyenas attacking them, is fairly slim. It does happen though. So occasionally, if there's a large enough group of hyena together that have found an injured lion, they may attack them. With the females, with an injured female, it's slightly more likely that a spotted hyena clan could be a threat. Awesome. And just like that, we have the sighting all to ourselves. And I think actually we're going to be able to stay for the rest of the morning until the end of the sunrise safari. A little bit of patience goes a long way out here. And we've got this beautiful sighting all to ourselves. What I do want to just do quickly is switch onto the northern channel. So the sighting's been run on different game drive channels, and just check in with any of Taxon or any of the other vehicles to see if they want to join us. Stations, I'm now on lock. The only vehicle on lock with these Birmingham Bengala, still Lalapanzi, same position at Twin Dams Junction, Gowrie, Main. And if anyone wants to come and join. Let's do a little bit of a reconnoiter, see if we can't find a nice different view, although this is a perfect setting with the sun coming out and the morning looking glorious. But now we don't have to worry about blocking anybody else's view. And while we pass quite close to this lion with the bulging stomach, Nat.Geo was wondering, hello boy, whether or not it's possible that this gentleman with the stomach rash, and it definitely looks like a stomach rash now looking at it from this angle, whether or not it's possible he has a bloated stomach, since he looks a little bit different from the others with their full bellies. It's possible, Nat.Geo, but unlikely. I think it's more just that he maybe gorged himself at a slightly different time, so he's carrying it in a different part of his stomach. It hasn't quite made its way straight through the intestines just yet. I don't think his stomach is more bloated than normal. But that being said, without actual physical examination of him, something that I think he might object to, especially in his sleepy state, I don't think he'd appreciate it. Without actually examining him, I don't know for 100% certain that that's not the case. I think, however, it is just a belly full of buffalo that he's carrying a little bit higher than the other two. Food babies is what they're all carrying at the moment. He's also very dirty. He's also covered in buffalo stomach contents. What's going to be amazing, I mean, hopefully they stick around with us for the next few days and stay in the area. And it's going to be amazing to watch the way in which those stomachs deflate. By tomorrow, they'll be almost flat. And by the next day, they will have regained their svelte figures. There's nothing quite like the digestive speed of a predator and the way in which they process that food. When you see them with full bellies like this, it's hard to imagine just how rapidly that's going to disperse and be digested and reduced to waste products. Very interesting. And it was one of the reasons why lions generally will hunt and kill, if they can, every 3 or 4 days. The Birmingham boys, of course, have been known to be incredible opportunists. So even with full bellies, if a buffalo herd decided to wander through this area, there is still the possibility that they will take a chance and go and take the opportunity to hunt them. All animals, all predators out here are opportunists like that. So even at their fullest, there's a chance that they will have a go at a meal if the opportunity presents itself. What also always astounds me in lion sightings like this is the speed at which a lion can go from sleeping like they are to being alert once again. Now, Mobile Paddy, just speaking about how deeply they are asleep, you were wondering if lions have vivid dreams because your dog at home very often runs in its sleep, as does mine actually. Mine also whimpers. My dog actually whimpers and cries and whines and sometimes barks in her sleep and wakes herself up. Lions do. Oh, hold on 1 second. Sorry, alarm calls again. Oh, I thought I heard alarm calls. False alarm. So Mobile Paddy, yes, I have seen lions have dreams. I've seen them twitch in their sleep. I'd love to know what they dream about. And that, of course, we will never know, so that's entirely up to you what you would suggest they might dream about. I'd love to actually hear your suggestions about what lions will dream about. I think most of us immediately think about them hunting. Maybe they have nightmares about other lions coming into their territories. Maybe they dream of a never-ending buffet supply of buffalo. Possibly even a fillet steak might enter into their dreams. But I have seen them twitch. I have seen them run in their sleep. They also snore. I have heard them snoring before. Particularly a sighting that I had with the timber males before the Birmingham started their takeover, where the two of them were lying up on Arathusa, snoring away happily. So not only do lions dream, but they also snore. Now let's hear what suggestions you might have for lion dreams. And they spend such a long time, or such a huge part of their lives, catnapping. That being said, I think that their dream cycles are slightly shorter. I don't know too much about the sleep cycles of lions. But as with all animals out here, they can't really spend too much time in the deepest of sleeps. They probably, most of the time, they are just dozing. And Louis the Lion has passed on a very sweet suggestion as to what the Birmingham boys might be dreaming about. Louis, I don't think they're dreaming of my arrival. Maybe Dave's. I've noticed a connection between Dave and the Birmingham boys. Every time they get up and walk past, they seem to look deep into Dave's eyes, as they do, which I think has been quite an experience for Dave over the past few weeks since he joined the Wild Earth team. So, Louis, I don't think it's me. Maybe they dream of you, Dave. It's up to you to decide what context they dream about you in. They do, of course, look at Dave because he's higher than me. Here's a complex question that's come through from Steve. Whilst their eyes are firmly shut, Steve was wondering about the pupils of lions compared to domestic cats, and has, speaking about that, the eye contact that's been made with our cameraman fairly regularly, and with us as well. And Steve's saying that the eyes of lions are different to those of the shape of the domestic cats, and whether or not there is a specific reason for it. Both are or can be relatively nocturnal. I mean, that immediately goes to the shape of the eye, and the position of the eye tells you a lot about the way in which an animal operates. So obviously the lion's pupils very much adapted for being able to expand to allow the largest amount of ambient light into the back of the retina. Oh, it's a really good question, Steve. I'm just trying to think my way through this as to why they might be different from domestic cats. The one aspect of it that I will put forward as a suggestion is that we have played a tremendous role in the evolution of domestic cats. We are responsible for the form that they are in now, as a form of artificial selection and artificial evolution. We've bred them and maintained them in a way that has suited us. Maybe that played or had an impact on the shape of their pupils. It's possible. Maybe the way in which they now, or the lifestyles that they now lead, whether it be as strays working around people, or whether it be as house pets. Really good question, Steve. Not sure. I think there's a different number of possible answers. The lions, of course, whilst they are part of the Felidae family, or order almost, no, Felidae family, sorry, the carnivora order, they are totally in a separate genus and species. So you might find that the Panthera genus have evolved differently. And I bet if we had a look at cheetah's pupils, they would probably act differently to those of lions as well. So a cheetah not falling into the Panthera grouping of large cats, but still, and also a diurnal predator, you'd probably find that their pupils are a completely different shape. Steve, I'll have a good think about that and see if I can come up with different answers. Chileanne has suggested, while we watch our dreaming lions, that maybe the lions dream about driving around this wonderful property and watching humans sleep all day. It's also a very good suggestion. I'm going to try and show you something. I'm not quite sure how we're going to go about this because I don't want to disturb them. Well done, Dave. We've got some visitors on my book box. Sorry, flies, to interrupt you. A bit voyeuristic of us, but there you go. Some mating flies that have come from the lions and joined onto us, and they're actually quite beautiful for flies. Greenish color with large red compound eyes. I don't know which species this is, but it is an interesting one, and I'm fairly certain that these guys have joined us from this lion sighting. Perhaps decided that the privacy of the vehicle was more appropriate for their current activity than perhaps the lion's skin was. And there you go. Some flies have decided to join us. Oh, now I can smell the lions. Sensational, who has stuck with us for this morning's drive. Sensational saying that if she did a live game drive from where they live, that perhaps it would be a little bit more boring than ours, maybe the odd dog or cat. Well, I mean, we always encourage people to apply some of what we've mentioned and talked about in these safaris to their everyday lives. And it's amazing what natural wonders you can find in different areas. One of my dreams is to be able to travel at some point and to get to see wildlife and vegetation and trees in a totally different area to the one that I am so accustomed to. The nice thing about being a safari guide is that you always have new guests, and the same applies for us as presenters, new guests and new viewers, and every time a viewer finds something remarkable or interesting or beautiful, you look at it with fresh eyes almost. I can't count the number of times that I have sat with sleeping lions before, and yet every every sighting is different because the questions that come through and the comments that come through from you guys get us talking about a completely different train of thought to the one we've chatted about before. That is the nice thing about being a guide. That constant reevaluating of the world around you with fresh and open eyes. It's also one of the reasons why I always force myself to stop and look at the sunset and not take it for granted. We went through a period where the lions sort of stood within us. The other lodges definitely had an opportunity to see them. Sorry about that, Matt. We just had a brief and mysterious signal drop. I don't know. You know, we're sitting right underneath a power line. I wonder whether or not that plays some kind of role. With my very limited understanding of the way such things work, we are sitting right underneath it, which might explain why we suddenly experienced a mysterious drop in signal. Vibration shot through the power lines. Oh. Go.
So it looks like a gremlin climbed into Jamie's car. Hopefully her and Dave can poke it with a stick, get it out before it breathes. But it has been a very fruitful morning for lions, not so fruitful for leopards, but hopefully there'll be some tracks out. It's a nice cool day, so maybe the leopards will move during the day and we will spot the tracks on the sunset safari. But it's been absolutely wonderful being out with you, and hopefully, I think it was Jeannie who would have maybe got 200 birds with that shikra, or little sparrowhawk. So from Aviem and myself, we bid you adieu for a few hours till we see you again on the sunset safari. Oh, sorry, apparently there's still gremlins with Jamie, so you stuck with me for a bit longer. Let's see what we can find, maybe another bird or two. I'm hoping maybe some of those ellies we've seen have moved towards this area. It'd be lovely to see some elephants out in the open. Now, quarantine looks lovely and green and full of grass, but a lot of it's not grass. And we're going to go have a look at what some of it is. So there's literally entanglement of devil thorns. And this is a particularly thick little patch here, showing their lovely yellow flowers. This is Tribulus tribulus. Now, when it was very, very dry, and before the rain came, it's not common to see elephants eating devil thorns, but they were eating them because there was a lack of other food around. Now they have a wonderful little, well, not so wonderful if you're barefoot, seed. That is actually 3 seeds stuck together, and each of them got a spike on them. And the last time I checked, there were no thorns here, but let's have a look now. So what I do, and so it's been a few days and they do develop quite quickly, so I'm just gently touching them, trying to see if I can feel a thorn yet. I can show you, it doesn't look like it. not quite yet. So we're going to have to keep checking that when those thorns come out. So I have told you before, but really interesting. It's one of the only little pretty wildflowers I know of that's been used as a murder weapon. So they themselves are not noxious and are even eaten in times of famine in places like Nigeria and the far northwest Africa. But how they're used is a murder weapon. Those tiny little thorns, that tri-pronged seed I was telling you about, is soaked in poison such as cyanide or something like that. And then the thorns are laid outside of the door of the intended victim. So as walks outside to have a stretch in the morning, stands on a thorn, ow, thinks nothing of it, but are poisoned like that. And there's actually been 12 cases of this reported. So apparently those gremlins bred at a very quick rate with Jamie, so you are going to be stuck with me for a bit longer. So Diana in England is asking, do the thorns on an acacia mostly point downwards to try keep browsing animals off? Not really, Diana, and it also depends on the acacia species. You must remember there are lots of them. On that blackthorn, that one we were looking earlier with those very big white thorns, actually sort of whirled around, they point in all directions. But certain animals have developed ways to get around that. Giraffe and elephant in particular, their mouths are so tough, it doesn't actually make a difference to them. They'll munch through the thorns. But kudu will be dainty enough to feed in between. I'm trying to find you an acacia now. This is possibly the worst place to look for acacias on Djuma, but there should be one up ahead. Oh, look at that. We might not find an acacia in time, but we will find a lovely big group of inyala. All the ladies and sub-adults. So early morning, they sometimes come out into the clearings to feed, and now as it gets a little bit later, they're going to move back towards the thickets. And notice how they walk. It almost looks like they're on tiptoes. So you'll find a lot of your animals that spend quite a lot of time in the thickets and in the thick bush will walk like that. And particularly when it's even thicker bush, they'll put their foot almost, their back foot almost exactly where their front foot has stepped. There's a little boy, you can just see his horns popping up. And they are mostly browsers, so when we do see them on the clearings, they're often feeding off the little shoots of trees that are just sparking up. But preferably they do like an acacia. And there, back to the left of him, there's an acacia for you, Diana. There we go. We did find an acacia with the inyala. And as you can see, those thorns are not generally pointed down, but rather whirled around in lots of different directions. So thanks for joining us. Hopefully Jamie's gremlins are all purged by the sunset safari, and we'll have lots to show you. It's been wonderful. The sunset safari will be starting 5 minutes early today, and we'll be starting with a school show. So don't forget to join us for wonderful animals and informative facts.